meetings live.
Thank you, Ruben. Welcome to the virtual Cabinet panel on the environment meeting that is being conducted with members and officers at various locations, communicating via audio, video and online. There is also the opportunity for the public and press to listen to and view proceedings. We also have contributors from various organisations with us here to provide feedback. Before the meeting starts, I would like to invite the committee clerk, Kaylin Ballard, to take a roll call to confirm that required members, officers and participants can be heard.
Thank you. So when your name is called, please indicate your attendance to confirm required members, officers and registered speakers are present and can hear and be heard. So we've got Councillor Amy Allen. Have we got Councillor Steve Jarvis?
Yes, I'm here.
Brilliant. Councillor Carol Stenier.
Yes, I'm here. Thanks.
Councillor Chris Hinchliffe.
Hi, yes, I'm here.
Councillor George Davies.
Yes, I'm here.
Councillor Gerald Morris.
Yeah, I'm here, yeah.
Brilliant. Councillor Juan Cowell. Councillor Michael Muir. Councillor Val Bryant. Okay, so I'm guessing we don't have the last three at the moment. Then for officers, have we got Georgina Chapman?
Present.
Ruben Ayavu?
Present.
Roger Pittman?
Yeah, present.
Matthew Clark?
Present.
Brilliant. And Frank Harrison?
Present.
Perfect. And then for members of the public, we have Roger Lovegrove?
Present.
Brilliant. Is there anyone else in attendance whose name I haven't called out?
There's a few members of the public, Kaylin. So there's John Webb, and I think I saw Sue Lines, and I can see Gilly Chegwin. I think that's it for now.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. So I'll hand back over to the chair now.
Thank you, Kaylin. So apologies for absence. We haven't been sent any, although we're probably going to have some new ones perhaps. Nope. Minutes of the previous meeting. I'd like to propose that we take as read and approve as a true record the minutes of the meeting held on the 19th of October 2022. Can I have a seconder? Steve or Gerald? Okay, does anyone have any comments on the minutes before we carry on? Can't see anyone waving. Fantastic. So we'll take those as agreed. So Chair's announcements. In accordance with Council policy, this meeting is being audio recorded as well as filmed. The audio recordings will be available to view on mod.gov and the film recording via the NHDC YouTube channel. Members are reminded to make declarations of interest before an item. The detailed reminder about this and speaking rights are set out under Chair's announcements on the agenda. If you would like to speak during the meeting, please use the raise hand button in Zoom, or if you don't have one, please raise your hand so that we can see who wishes to speak. Members are reminded that this council has declared a climate emergency. This is a serious decision and means that as this is an emergency, all of us officers and members have that in mind as we carry out various roles and tasks for the benefit of our district. Notifications of other business, I have none. And next we have Cabinet Panel for the Environment information, Georgina to present.
Yes, so if we just kind of run through this quickly. So if we talk about the update on the work that we've been doing, so there's the contributions to the Hertfordshire Climate Change and Sustainability Partnership, the HCCSP. So where we are with that is that for the original four thematic groups, so that's water, biodiversity, carbon reduction and transport, we've been asked by the HCCSP members to kind of go through those action plans and present some updated versions. So that will include updating the context, archiving actions, and kind of updating where we have delivered on actions, clarifying targets, and kind of making sure that all the actions are smart, so smart, measurable, actionable, timescales, that kind of thing. A lot of them were, but there were a few that kind of weren't. So they want us to make all of those actions smart, and then also kind of trying to get a broader sense of the overall landscape. So taking more into account the work that other organisations are doing and what their plans are, so that we can kind of see how our actions that are around what local authorities can do can fit in with the actions of community groups and other relevant organisations. So North Herts is still going to be leading on the biodiversity subgroup. And so we've had a kick-off meeting before Christmas again. We reconvened the group to create a plan of action, and then we're meeting again next Wednesday to start going through the action plan and making those changes. So that's the action plans. And then the Solar Together update. So Solar Together was our bulk solar purchase scheme for residents. So the period for residents to accept the offers that they received has come to a close. North Herts had 2,262 people express interest in solar, and 410 of those have accepted their offer, and surveys have begun. And I think there actually might have been a few installations as well now. All installations are planned to be completed by the end of April this year. And as far as I'm aware, we're still on track for that at the moment. We also had 107 people express interest in just battery storage. So people that already had panels, and 18 of those have accepted that offer. We're going to be getting weekly updates on the installations to see how they're going, and they'll let us know if there's kind of any issues or any complaints or any delays to the timescales as well. And then we're also waiting on some data from iChooser, who are the company that are running this in conjunction with the local authorities. We're hoping to kind of understand where our acceptances have come from in North Herts to see if there's any kind of patterns. The Heritage Foundation in Letchworth have a additional application process for any of their residents who want to get solar panels, and there's also design principles that those residents have to follow. So we're kind of quite keen to see if that's impacted the amount of people from Letchworth who might have been able to participate in the scheme. And then just some more stuff on the newer subgroups through the HCCSP. So the behaviour change subgroup is continuing its work, and we sit on that subgroup, and they're due to take a paper to the officer group of HCCSP and then to HCCSP to kind of prioritise which areas we want to focus on to begin with for some behaviour change interventions. And then the adaptation subgroup is continuing to work on identifying climate risks across all the different service areas for all of the councils in Hertfordshire. Internally, we've been working to produce a summary of the carbon emissions reports that we've had done over the last couple of years, which gives us a kind of baseline for a year of the council's carbon emissions. They're quite wieldy reports, so we're trying to kind of distill it down, distill the key messages so that we can publish it in an accessible format. And we are hoping to report that to the panel once that work's complete. And then just to say that our kind of reviews of how much carbon has been saved so far is ongoing, and we'll also update you when we're kind of complete with that work as well. I think that is the majority of the updates that I want to give in the information note. Just to kind of talk about the action tracker, we're aware that there's quite a lot of things in there that are on hold, that have been on hold partly due to the pandemic. And so the plan is to kind of have a larger review of this as the new civic year kind of rolls on in May. And there's some that we're kind of thinking may be best placed in other cabinet panels, because we've now got a cabinet panel on community engagement, and there's also a revived cabinet panel on transport. So we want to look at where those actions are best placed to sit, and how we can kind of work together with the other cabinet panels to progress them a bit further. And I think that's it, unless anybody has any questions.
All right, does anybody have any questions for Georgina on the report? If you can't raise your hand on Zoom, you can wave vigorously. I'm sure I'll spot you. No? Okay. All right.
I think Chris has got his hand.
There's no questions. And oh, Chris has got his hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one.
Can't see anything. Ah, there you are. Sorry. Sorry, Chris.
Sorry. Hiya. Will you be collecting any information, any data, any evidence on why people haven't accepted the offers regarding the solar panels that were made to them? That was obviously be very interesting for us to understand.
Yes, so iChoose are the company that are running this in conjunction with us. They do ask some people for that information, and I have received a report to look through, and the main reason was the cost, and iChoose have accepted that the cost, the saving, if you like, that they were able to achieve this time was lower than in previous years, because of the global events that have made the parts more expensive and the demand at the moment. There is so little installer capacity. I can dig those out and give you the whole list of and the proportions that said, each reason, but I remember that the cost was the predominant reason why people hadn't accepted this time.
Thank you. If we could see that breakdown, that would be really interesting. Thank you.
Steve's got his hand up.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's quite clear that it was not as an attractive deal as previous rounds, and that is probably a bit as a capacity. I went to an event that was essentially talking about what local government can do to promote net zero, including renewable energy, and there was a lot of discussion about the potential for working with local training providers in terms of encouraging them to deliver the sort of skills that are required to implement renewable energy projects. And I wonder whether or not it's worth having a conversation with North Herts College about what their position is on that, what they're doing in terms of trying to increase the capacity, something that would presumably provide career opportunities for their students, as well as increasing the district's capacity to install renewable energy. So that's a conversation that might be worth having. It might not go anywhere, but it's probably worth engaging with them about it.
Excellent, thank you. Right. Any other questions or comments? Now people have had a chance to think about it. No. Okay. We now move on to, unless Georgina, you wanted to respond to any of those?
I don't think I want to respond to anything.
Cool, thank you. Okay, so public participation. We've got some speakers giving a short presentation. We are starting with, our presenters this evening are Matthew Clark and Roger Pittman. And we'll be starting with Matthew, and I believe, Matthew, you got are you taking over hosting? Oh, there it is, look at that.
Hello, as if by magic. I think one of your colleagues is going to whiz through the presentation for me. There'll be lots of next slides, please. Or not too much of next slides. It will not be a death by PowerPoint for you tonight. Thanks, Chair, for the invitation to come and speak to you tonight. I'm here on behalf of Hertfordshire County Council to say what we're doing on the cleaner air front, which is one of the 9 ambitions in the Sustainable Hertfordshire strategy. There is an air quality strategy of its own as well, sat at Hertfordshire County Council. Bit of background about me, so you know who I am, because I don't think I've had the pleasure of most of you yet. I've been working in the environmental health field since about 2010, biology background, environmental health masters, and some public health diploma qualifications have brought me to where I am today. So I'm the programme manager for the Clean Air Agenda at Hertfordshire County Council. A few extra bits that I'm involved with: I sit on my Chartered Institute's environmental protection panel since its inception a few years ago, which covers air quality, but also noise and contaminated land and other things associated. And currently, I am the local authority representative for the DEFRA Air Quality DEFRA Air Quality Information System review, which is underway. We're a year in, expect to finish that in a year's time. So all of those things mean that I can keep my ear close to the ground and hopefully find out and keep finding out what's going on and bring it into Hertfordshire. Next slide, please. So Hertfordshire County Council, as the Highways Authority, as a public health authority, which has its own framework and outcomes, objectives, has a role to play in air pollution or creating cleaner air. Across the county, this map is out of date because 9 of these original 31 on there, 9 of those 31 air quality management areas have been revoked since 2018, which leaves us with 22, 2 of which are in the North Herts region. But as you can see, the spread of the air quality management areas, which are areas where it is expected to be likely to exceed the legislative legal limits for a particular air pollutants, most in the south of the county, and then a sprinkling in the north. But we're going in the right direction. So 9 gone, but still some work to do. Some of the those air quality management areas exceed by a significant amount still, so some by up to about 40%. I am probably talking about 2019's data then, because 2020 data obviously has quite compromised in terms of any trend due to the implications of COVID lockdown measures. Nitrogen dioxide, the big producer and source is transport, and we just had a lot less vehicles on the road. Since then, we've had a bit of a shift in the working world, and we've seen the makeup of transport and travel change as well. So public transport is suffering slightly, but number of vehicles is still slightly down in some areas, maybe because of these kind of forums where we can meet virtually. Very good for the sustainability agenda, obviously. I also wanted to talk on top of those air quality management areas. We've just got now a PM 2.5 kind of limit level has come in the UK as of back end of December, and that has set a target of reaching 10 micrograms of PM 2.5 as an annual average by 2040. And if we just skip to the next slide, please. This is a map of the background PM 2.5s that DEFRA produce that we can see. So we still see that trend, as in with the air quality management areas, heavy influence in the south of the county, but we do have these elevated patches still right up into the north, including in the North Hertfordshire patch. So that 10 micrograms figure is something that's going to have to be worked towards going forward, and it's an interesting one. PM 2.5s, it's taken over from PM 10s. So we're only talking, sorry, about these fractions, particulates of 2.5 microns in diameter or less, PM 2.5, and PM 10 less than 10 microns in diameter. We've moved away a little bit from PM 10s to focus more on PM 2.5s in the UK, given the health information that's coming out. It seems to be the pollutant that has the biggest impact, and this is expected that it is due to it penetrating into the body deeper. So it gets right down deep into the lungs, gets taken across the barrier into the blood and transported all around the body. Some of the impact there is on oxidative stress of all organs. We're talking about impacts on every organ of the body. It's not just respiratory, cardio, it's every organ of the body, including the brain, links to dementia, links to Alzheimer's, links to skin aging, to sperm quality, and as I say, pretty much every illness you can think of, as well as the ones that spring to mind: asthma, COPD, stroke. So that's why we've moved to PM 2.5s, and the UK has adopted this new limit coming to force off the back of the Environment Act. The interesting thing about PM2.5 is that it doesn't have one completely dominant source like nitrogen dioxide. Nitrogen dioxide, you almost certainly talking about transport as the predominant source in every air quality management area, 70% plus. For PM2.5s, there is a heavy transport load, but the biggest contributor in the UK is actually construction and manufacture, followed by transport, with only 1% behind domestic solid fuel burning. So log burners, open fires, Argas, those kind of systems, they create a really significant proportion of the problem, something around 25%. And when you think that only about 8 to 9% of the households in the UK have a log burner of some description, that shows actually what these devices are emitting. It's a really big challenge for the future, particularly as they're often seen as a very sustainable, self-sufficient way of life. Next slide, please. I wanted to use the opportunity today to talk about some of the things HCC are doing and some of the things you might start to see on social media, on the web, and out about in your patch. We have a part DEFRA funded communications campaign underway at the moment under the banner of Let's Clear the Air. And some of the material that you can see here is some of the messages that have already gone out. The one in the middle, at stop, turn it off. This is on some bus backs at the moment. And one of the routes is just shown below. So you can see it cuts up into North Hertfordshire. So while you're out and about, you may see that banner plastered across the back of buses. It's an anti-idling message, idling a needless source of carbon, pollutants, and a waste of resource for the individual as well. I've mentioned a bit about PM2.5s and solid fuel burners, and the poster on the right is something that's been drawn up to help us take that message forward. And the one on the left is advocating people sign up to the free air pollution alerts, which all 10 of the districts and boroughs have signed up to in Hertfordshire. And we're trying to encourage people to sign up and understand more about when there might be high pollution events and what they can do to either be part of a solution or to keep themselves and their family and loved ones safe in those events. Next slide, please. Another project that's underway, it's nearly been delivered, is a county-wide air quality model, which is currently being worked up. We have paid a contractor called Ricardo to work this up for us, and it will deliver a model which gives us nitrogen dioxide, particulate, and carbon, CO2 emissions across the road network, across the whole of the county. This obviously, for most of you will recognise, this picture isn't part of Hertfordshire, it's London. You can see the wiggle of the Thames there cutting through the centre. I didn't have a current visual to be able to give you, so I'm stuck with this one for now, but it will look something similar to this. And it will help us look and predict forward into the future years, 2030 and 2036, to see if we did nothing other than what's in the pipeline, what will happen to emissions. And then if we did a thing or several things, what's the impact of those interventions? So it helps us to quantify the potential interventions that might come forward, or the impact of, for example, a planning application for lots of housing, the impact of that and the increase of vehicles on the road network. We'll be able to model that as well. The nice thing about this model, which I haven't seen in the past by any other model, will give us carbon dioxide emissions as well, which I think is a really key key point. And I hope that that's something that I'll be able to at some point speak to Georgina about, because it's probably something that she needs to be aware of going forwards, and we can kind of interrogate that system. And it will be available to all districts and boroughs if they would like to have a license to have access and get trained up. The offer is there. Next slide, please. I just wanted to highlight something we've been doing with data at the moment. Air quality is quite an interesting challenge because we only know what's going on where we monitor, but we can't monitor everywhere. And so we've tried to pull together various sources of data, which you can see on the left-hand side, including proximity to air quality management areas, that PM2.5 background I showed you earlier, and a variety of other health matrices and demographic bits of information, as well as canopy cover as a well-being factor. Scored all of those, ranked them, and combined them to get an overall score, which can then be bracketed off into highest risk through to lowest risk. And the snapshot there shows you the North Hertfordshire patch. No surprise, probably, given what I've been talking about, and though you've seen the parameters, that some of those areas are red or redder than others, given that they may have air quality management areas in them, or they may have a major road running through them, so the PM2.5 background levels are elevated. We're using this tool to then try and prioritize the areas where we take action for certain interventions. And an example of this could be the County Council's highways team, urban tree planting team, that are looking to, where they can, promote tree planting in those redder areas, knowing that foliage and greening can strip out some particulates from the air and some other pollutants, and also act as a buffer and a barrier against pollutants. It's also been used by the Countryside Rights of Way team to fit into their prioritisation tool, to enable them to have a health parameter within their tool, which shows them what schemes might be at the top of their list to take forwards. So we're trying to use the best evidence-based case to move forward with, and that's what this tool is helping to allow us to do. Next slide, please. I've mentioned a couple of these to you already, but this is a bit of a sum up slide for you. So I've mentioned highways tree planting. I've mentioned a little about Countryside Rights of Way at the very bottom there. A local example to raise is that in the planning phase at the moment is a new active travel route, which will run to Highfield School, which I think from Hitchin running kind of north to take you into Highfield School at the rear of it, across fields, instead of those children who are a vulnerable group to air pollution having to walk or cycle, scoot alongside the road network where the pollution is being produced. So that is something to try and reduce the exposure to the pollution that is out there, that our population, or some of our population, is exposed to. We're also doing a project with a public health team, we're trying to get a trial off the, trial is underway. We're just looking at particular schools. Won't be in North Hertfordshire at the start, but if we're unable to roll this out more widely, there is opportunity then for North Hertfordshire schools, and that's to provide air purification devices into classrooms to reduce the communicable disease loading in the air, and also reduce the particulate pollution loading in those classrooms. Won't do anything about NO2 at the moment, which is another pollutant of concern, but these air purifiers have got an eye to the future and are starting to incorporate catalytic elements which will take out nitrogen dioxide as well. So they then become potentially a more exciting prospect for the more full range of air pollutants that are out there. We also, through our public health Healthy Places team, provide commentary to planning applications with over 100 homes, and are putting informatives forward around placement of certain receptors within those developments, as well as some general cleaner air messaging. And a couple of other partners we're working with on top of our public health team, also our health colleagues in NHS through the integrated care system. Now we've been helping them with their creation of green plans and have a standing place on the working group and are seeing air quality actions getting taken place. They are currently, I think, in some hospitals have been given the offer of some idling activity that they can get involved with. We are promoting some joint working and joint learning, and I'm happy to say that they're looking to promote a cleaner air plan as of probably around July, getting that kickstart to have a real focus on cleaner air at NHS sites. I've kind of done this in reverse order, started from the bottom and worked to the top, but I've now got to the top of the list, which is considering idling at county office sites. We're very aware that idling is something that creates needless pollution. It's something which councils across the country often get messaged about. What's going on, what's going to happen, what are you doing to address this aspect of the pollution issue. And at the county council, we are currently looking to see if we are able to maybe move forwards with an anti-idling stance on our own sites, or some of our own office sites, as a first step, and using that to engage with our staff. We have a big staff base, and then see if we can roll that out to other partners. District and borough councils, yourselves included, might be interested to see how we've approached that and see if it's something that could be taken forward at your own site. I'm already talking to the NHS through the ICS contact around them adopting a similar approach. So where we can, we're trying to take as much action across as broad a field as we can, but make sure that action has as many legs possible to run off into the next area to create the biggest bang for the buck, which I think in a resource-strapped environment we're always after. Next slide, please. You'll be happy to hear, I think this brings us to the end. Yeah, questions. That email address, cleaner.air@hertfordshire.gov.uk, if you want to get in touch with me or the team in general, that's an easy in for you, hopefully quite an easy one to remember. And if you want to visit the Let's Clear the Air campaign web pages, that there is a link there. If these slides could be shared and then everyone will actually have that link, but equally, if you Google Let's Clean the Air Hertfordshire, I don't even think you need to put Hertfordshire, we should be one of the top few on that list on the first page. Very last thing I'll mention is that one of the things that we've done to try and give us a good footing to move forwards with the Cleaner Air campaign is ensure that cleaner air is referenced in all the right places. If you read the corporate plan for HCC, the wording cleaner air for all is there. If you read the health and wellbeing strategy, it is there. If you read the public health strategy, it is there. The local transport plan, it is there. So we are aligning all of those strategies and helping to show how Action for Air Quality is bringing the sustainability agenda forwards. Because as Georgina started us off with, there's a climate change emergency and we need to be acting where we can in a positive fashion as quickly as possible. And I'll stop there.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Matt. I've seen some questions pop up in the chat. I don't know if you've seen them.
I haven't, as I've been gabbing, but I will. I can try and if I start from the top and move through.
Yeah, I can read them out and then you can answer, or has everyone got them up? Or I'll read them out.
If you would, that would be great.
So does this mean buses this is from Roger Lovegrove, does this mean buses at bus stops for more than 10 seconds should switch off their engines, and how is this going to be achieved or policed?
Super question. It's very difficult for buses to sometimes do that. We are, by putting these messages out, it is starting to raise the idling agenda with bus companies. I've spoken to our contacts who run the the public services that HCC contract in some way, and they have a touch point around idling and trying to reduce idling and act on idling where they can. And we do have contacts which we follow up and pass on to those bus operators to highlight the fact idling has been occurring and to try and kind of see action. In terms of how is it policed, this is something that we're trying to win over, and the kind of hearts and minds. It's an engagement activity. We're trying to get the message through to all individuals, and as you say, we're trying to start with our own sites. That gives us access to communicate with all of our staff, who hopefully take this message not on board just while they're on our sites, but into the car park, wherever they may be, outside the school, if they're dropping off, picking up kids, and on and on. It's just one point of contact, but the campaign as a whole is helping us to get that message out wider. But there's always more work to do on idling.
Brilliant, thank you. John Webb asks regarding, so PM's particulate matter, isn't it?
It is, yes.
So PM 2.5 particulate pollution, is that 2.5 microns and below? Or just a range around 2.5 microns? So is that up to and including, or that much and beyond? And
it's a really good question. I'll answer that bit first. So yes, it is 2.5 and below. So anything below 2.5 microns, anything below 2.5 microns. Very, very small. Pass straight through the lining of your lungs into your blood with pretty much no bother at all. That.
Very scary. And B, at present, is the limit just proposed guidance, or is it actually enforced? So what is the legal limit for PM 2.5 in the UK? And there's more. This recommended guideline limit is an annual mean concentration of 10 micrograms per cubic metre of air. In the European Union, the legal annual mean air quality limit value, or the legal limit for PM 2.5, is 25 micrograms per cubic metre. This limit has been transposed into UK law. That's in what's it brackets. So
yeah, so just before December, the Environment Act 2021 new limits were provided, and that gives us that 10 micrograms per cubic metre by 2040. That's what we're trying to be achieved. That's the new limit that has been set. Now, actually, HCC signed up to a letter that UK 100 put together, which calls for that limit to be reached much sooner, by 2030. But government has decided to stick with the initial 2040. There is another side to that as well. There's another metric, which is a reduction of 30 or 35% from, I think, 2018 base level by 2040 as well, which means that if you're under 10, doesn't mean that we shouldn't be trying to go further, because there is no safe level for particulates and nitrogen dioxide. So yes, the new level that we're looking for is 10 micrograms as an annual average in a cubic metre of air by 2040, and that's replaced those older levels. It's still twice what the World Health Organization guideline value is. That guideline was reviewed and revised just not quite last year, in 2021, September 2021. So still potential to go further based on the evidence base.
Okay, thank you. And Gilly has asked, will it be possible for other cyclists and walkers to use the off-road access between Hitchin and Highfields? Gilly, is this directly related to the, or is this related to the presentation, or is it a general question for the panel?
I don't know. It's a question that came to mind when I heard it was going to exist. Will it just be exclusively for school children, or is it going to be a general use?
Gilly, I will have to get back to you on that one. I'll go and find out, and I will make sure that if I send something through to those who invited me, that can get get sent around. So it's in its planning phase at the moment. So the answer might be we're not sure yet exactly, but I will go and ask the question and get you the current answer.
Thank you.
And I suppose I will ask it in a way that's saying, how is this going to be as useful as possible for as many? Because that's certainly what I think you're angling at, and I
Yes,
would certainly agree.
absolutely.
That's what we want at every stage if we can.
Thank you.
There is an additional question there about Luton Airport, but considering that's Bedfordshire, I'm presuming that's not coming under your jurisdiction.
Yeah, it's
about
one.
The
sorry, I've just I think seen that question.
I've just as well. Yeah. Contamination contribution from Luton Airport.
We, in general, from looking at the various planning applications and things that have gone through, I appreciate that probably those of you living in Patch will know this inside out. I've only been around for just less than 18 months in the authority, and I don't live locally. So it's not been something that's been in my local press for me to pick up on. But we do know that within Hertfordshire, a big contribution is not from the air traffic itself, it's from the road vehicles getting to and from the airport. And so in terms of that aspect, when we have the county-wide model, the road network contribution is being picked up. In terms of those parameters that we've used of the background maps, for instance, for PM2.5s, DEFRA have air transport as something that's factored in there, as they do for all sources, or as many sources as they can possibly be able to quantify and put a number to. So sorry, not quite a complete answer, but that's as much of an answer as I can give you.
Thank you, Matt. I've got 2 hands up in the on the Zoom. I'm going to take just from top to bottom. So Councillor Gerald Morris first, please.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Matthew. Obviously, pollution doesn't confine itself very neatly to each a county or council's area. Is there somebody like you in every county council and city? Do you know, or are you unique, or do you not know?
Well, I'd like to think I'm unique for at least something.
Well, yeah, obviously, yeah.
It is a really good question. Actually, I came to this role because it was quite unique. It was quite an interesting role to have this level at a county council in a 2-tier authority, and my paycheck is half paid by the Sustainable Hertfordshire team, the other half by the public health team, and I really liked that link. That to me showed that someone was really thinking about where this agenda belongs and looking to join up wherever possible. So that was why I came into this role. But the answer is I honestly couldn't tell you. I bet there's a few out there that have these similar roles. In unitary authorities, it again is different because of the makeup. But the one thing that I should have probably said, obviously, the roles and responsibilities for air quality, I tried to highlight it at the start by saying, we are the Highways Authority, we have a public health service, so it should be embedded, cleaner air, in what a county council does. But then the roles and responsibilities of the officers like Roger on the ground here in North Hart that are doing the review and assess function that is a requirement is a really key part, because without that review and assessment, we don't know where we should be looking to focus. We'd just be kind of sticking a finger up in the wind of where to act and by how much. So I feel it's a good thing to have it in both camps, that you've got kind of clean air specialists in both tiers of authority, because it helps us join those dots, and it means we speak the same language as well. So because sometimes things can get lost in translation. If you talk to public health people, they talk in a certain way. Talk to environmental health people, a little bit of a different way. And the same in any kind of nuanced function that you come to.
Thank you for that. Obviously, it would be a pity if there's only 2 or 3 of you in the country, or perhaps we obviously are unique. We've already covered that. But if there were obviously, if people like you were spread obviously throughout all the counties, you could operate as a group, as it were, and perhaps add more strength to what you're doing. Anyway, just moving on. Obviously, very critical of log burners, solid fuel burners. I understand why, but looking at the pollution map you showed earlier, I mean, most of the PM 2.5s, I think, on the map were obviously around the cities where there are lots and lots of houses, lots of people, and I guess industry as well. I mean, are log burn? Are there I wouldn't have thought that many people in cities have log burners, yet you got all that pollution. Is that? Am I wrong? Am I misunderstanding it?
This is the challenge, and I'll slightly paraphrase from.
I don't want to take too long on this because it gets complicated, but yeah.
Which was done, yes, absolutely. But in general, there are it's the urban burner who is probably could be said to be needlessly burning. As long as it isn't, this is being done because there's a real cost of living crisis, and burning for a particular interval is the cheapest thing to do, and that's the only way they keep the house and the kids warm, and then obviously there's an absolute need. But we're talking about often the weekend burners, because it's nice to sit in front of flames. It's very hypnotic, isn't it? And people in urban scenarios where the domestic solid fuel burning isn't the primary source of fuel typically don't burn efficiently because they're not thinking of the cost, so they don't need to. And if they're burning inefficiently, it's creating more pollution. Within the room for a log burner, you're looking at elevating levels by about threefold within the room that the burner is in. So it's not all going up the chimney, it's staying in the room itself. For open fires, we've just done some research through the DEFRA grant with some monitors, and we found it's 10 times or more elevation of particulates within the room. But in urban zones where we have higher backgrounds anyway, because there's more activity, this loading of adding another source is seen as a potential problem going forwards.
So, okay, so you're saying it is obviously a city problem for the reasons you said, and particularly at weekends for the reasons you said.
Yeah, urban areas rather than city. Yeah. I'd go down into town.
I could keep. Well. I think I could keep. I've got lots more questions, but I won't ask them because I think I'm going to take up too much of your time. But thank you anyway.
You're very welcome, and fire them through to that cleaner.air at email, and I'll make sure I get back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gerald, if you put them in the chat, it will get other people thinking as well. Extra questions are helpful, even if we don't really have time to answer them all or pick them apart. Having them there is very helpful too. Next in line was Councillor Jarvis.
Hi, thanks, Matthew. It was an interesting presentation, and the maps that you showed of 2.5 particulate levels, and I guess you could probably have shown similar maps of other of NOx or something like that. They cover relatively large areas, but my assumption is that actually there are much more localized variations within those areas that you showed, and that if I was to measure the level of particulates at the front of my house next to the road, I get a different measurement from if I measured it at the end of my garden a few tens of meters away. Is that the case? And is the air quality model going to provide us with that extra sort of level of detail?
It is to some extent the case. So particulates don't quite act like other pollutants. So nitrogen dioxide is a gas, and it dilutes out very quickly when you move back from the road. But that's partly because of just dilution, but also because of air chemistry that's going on. Particulates are not quite the same. So you don't see that same level of drop off. So the answer is yes. Ish, but certainly the further away you go, you get some dilution.
But will the model, the example of the model you showed in London, you could identify where Park Lane was, but once you got into Hyde Park, the red lines had disappeared.
Yeah, absolutely. We should see something very similar to that across our whole road network. It will delineate at quite small distances, so you'll be able to see the drop off. I think it was going to be something like 100 meters in more rural areas, but maybe down to 10 meters in a more urban patch, so we can really get those site specifics.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, do we have any more questions? Did I want to wave vigorously? There is some follow-up comments in the chat from the previous questions, but I'm also quite aware of the time. Just wanting to confirm some bits. So Matt, if you could take a look at that and then get back to us in a bit. And then we've got, excuse me while I just get myself sorted here. Right, so next we've got Roger Pittman, our North Wales Council Air Quality Consultant, has got a presentation as well. Normally I would have had two presentations together and then taken questions, but as the questions were flying in the chat and everyone seemed quite keen, I thought I'd take them straight after and then follow up with Roger. So Roger, if you want to make a start, and then we'll follow up with questions and any finalisations anyone wants to do as well. Roger, are you there?
Yes, hello, hi. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you now.
Okay, yes, apologies about that. I had to actually come in on my phone, and you can imagine messing about with the phone, it doesn't work particularly straightforwardly. So first of all, apologise to everyone that I haven't got a prepared presentation. I'm afraid I was only informed about this meeting yesterday, so there was no time to think about a presentation. But what I will do, I think for simplicity, is just talk about the recent annual status report that we do for DEFRA. So if I just give a little bit of background to that and also a quick intro to myself. My background is I worked for over 25 years in local authority work in Oxford and majored on air pollution and public health. Did a master's degree in air pollution and public health at Birmingham Public Health Department, and then went on to work at DEFRA as an air quality science policy advisor. And then since then, I've worked as an air quality consultant for the last approximately 7 years. So that's a quick intro to me. I'm employed as an air quality consultant, which means I'm a little bit distant from the everyday, but I do particular tasks on behalf of the council. And one of those has been to manage the production of the air quality status report. So just to introduce this report and explain what it is, because I guess you won't be able to see a copy. It's a report that all local authorities are required to do. It's a requirement under the Environment Act, which requires all local authorities to monitor and report on air quality in their area. And every local authority in the country is required to do it. And it obviously focuses where air pollution is particularly most significant. And for most urban local authorities, that really revolves around major roads. So historically, the air pollution in North Hertfordshire has shown up as poor in just one or two areas, which is particularly in Hitchin, where there's been a couple of declared air quality management areas. And these go back a number of years. And so if I just talk to those to start with, so there's an air quality management area declared in Stevenage Road and one in Paynes Park. An air quality management area is essentially an area that's declared because the air quality objectives are exceeded consistently in that area. So what we're talking about for these two areas in Hitchin are exceedances of the objectives for nitrogen dioxide. When these were declared, there were exceedances, but fortunately, the picture is now that air quality has improved significantly. And so, in summary, for the Stevenage Road AQMA, there's been no results above objectives for 5 years in succession from 2017 right up to 2021, and no results within 10% of objective levels in the last 4 years. And similarly, for the Paynes Park AQMA, we've got 2 years with results above objectives in the last 5 years. So that's only 2017, 2018. Since then, 3 of the last 5 years, we've had results within 10% of the objective levels, but no results above the objectives. That leaves us in a position which we've been reporting for the last 2 years, that it's likely that both of these AQMAs will be put forward for revocation, probably this time next year, when we've had a year post-COVID, when we've got some more normal traffic to actually assess. So as it stands, both of these AQMAs are potentially going to be revoked. So that's the first point to talk about. The other key aspect and part of the annual status report is really is the Air Quality Action Plan. And I'd just like to talk to that really, because I think that it provides some focus and also some linked thoughts between the work that's done on climate change and also the work that takes place in conjunction with the County Council. So I'm just going to read a little bit from the executive summary of this report that talks to those issues. So the climate emergency had 3 priorities, which was taking action, enabling carbon savings, and inspiring the community to encourage citizens and businesses to take action. And action so far includes commissioning an assessment of the Council's carbon emissions and a roadmap to net zero to allow us to understand where our emissions come from and how we can reduce them. Sorry, I've just lost my place. Switch to renewable energy and green gas to power and heat our buildings, make changes to taxi and licensing policy, including a no idling points system introduced to enforce against drivers who do not comply. Requirement for all new vehicles, new or replaced from 2028 to be ultra low emission vehicles. Continuing to replace and council vehicles with ultra low emission or electric vehicles when leases come up for renewal. Committing to using Section 106 Sustainable Transport Funds for measures to encourage cycling and walking. Worked with Hertfordshire County to deliver new cycling facilities, particularly stands. Also worked with the County Council to develop a local cycling walking plan. Free trees to North Herts residents. The council motion to promote renewable energy to support the local electricity bill. Those are measures that come under the carbon strategy, climate change strategy, but there are obviously an awful lot of links, and I'd just like to sort of highlight those really. So further actions proposed by the climate change strategy and relating to air quality include the following. Begin transitioning to zero emission council vehicles as leases come up. Reduce staff and councillor business travel through use of Zoom, here we are, and similar technologies, including working for home. Exploring opportunities around low emission refuse freighters. Quantify how much land we would need to plant trees on to offset 5% of the council's 2019-20 carbon emissions. Provide more electric car charging facilities. Explore the possibility of making it cheaper for zero emission vehicles to use council car parks. Work with the County Council to improve the provision of on-street EV charging. work with other public and private entities to improve provision of EV charging, progress the implementation of a better cycle network, linking with the district and beyond, ensure that master plans and planning applications for new developments are designed around streets and routes for active travel rather than cars, and create walkable neighbourhoods, encourage residents to make behaviour changes by highlighting positive actions that can be taken and informing them of more environmentally friendly options. And I just made the point when I wrote those points to really highlight the links between climate change and air quality, and just to highlight really that measures to address climate change can be considered in tandem with measures to address air pollution and vice versa. Do you want me to stop there or to carry on? I realise I said quite a lot. There may be some comments want to come on, or if you're happy for me to continue, I've got a little bit more to say, which just takes
I've got a comment regarding car idling. That's just come up a couple of times now, but especially at schools. I noted on the map I've seen about regarding contaminants and pollutants in the air, and you mentioned the area in Hitchin. That particular area is on one side of the railway tracks, on the kind of non-publicly accessible side, if that makes sense, of Hitchin station and that side of Hitchin. And I also noted in that area there's at least 5 schools. So I don't know if maybe they're that's just a coincidence, or if that's probably a direct thing. I'm also aware that that's a largely residential area, and the other side is actually a bit more industrial, and therefore less people overall. But is that probably right, that there's a lot of schools, a lot of potential cars idling? Is that that's a direct issue?
Well, that would be one of the reasons why those particular areas have been declared as air quality management areas. I think one of the things that I would wish from any work with the county would that we would look to what the model can show us in terms of what local traffic congestion is, because really the major indicator of excess air pollution in cities is usually to do with areas where there's traffic congestion. And obviously, if you start to unpick that and think, well, there's often a significant increase of traffic to do with the school run. And if, there can be further measures to discourage where possible, where practicable, to reduce individual transport to and from schools, that would be a very good thing. But obviously it reflects the local road network, it reflects the local geography, and whatever else that those roads are carrying at the time. It's not a straightforward answer. It's not a it's not a simple problem. But yeah, I'll stop there.
Right. It sounds something like each school is probably going to need its own policy and plan, because every school and the access to every school is different, or it's in a different area. In a different I
think one of the things that I would talk to is if I was sort of working towards getting on to the measures that are in our action plan, but maybe I could just go straight to that and talk about that a bit.
No other, well, actually I've just seen Steve Jarvis's hand up. Steve, did you want to? Okay. Oh, and Frank's.
Yes, it's very good news that the air quality levels have improved at the 2 AQMAs. Is the supposition that that's because of improvements in vehicle performance? Because, presumably the drivers are numbers of vehicles and emissions per vehicle. Because while it's good to know that things have got better, it's also important to understand what made them get better. Firstly, so you can replicate it elsewhere, and secondly, so you can avoid it undoing it.
Yeah, no, Steve, I think you're absolutely spot on. It definitely is to do with the fact that, vehicle emissions by vehicle have improved dramatically over the last 10 years. There's been something like a 40% drop in total nitrogen oxide emissions over the last 10 years. And that's reflected in what you see on the ground. So if the government have got one thing right in terms of environmental strategy, it's definitely been, the work to reduce emissions from, internal combustion engines, and obviously the introduction of low emission vehicles and electric vehicles is continuing to add to that. So I think one thing really to profile at this point is just to say that air quality has significantly improved, without doubt, and that really, in many ways, the nitrogen dioxide problem is, in one sense, is going away. But, and I will put a big but, in my mind, I say, as somebody who I started off the air quality monitoring program and modelling program in Oxford, getting on for 20 years ago. And the one thing I always eventually said to myself was, really, when we monitor for nitrogen dioxide, in many ways, it can be a proxy for monitoring for particulates. And as Matthew quite correctly said, the real bigger health issue is on fine particulates. That's the real issue, and the thing that we, have to consider as a priority. But it's the thing that's possibly the hardest to control.
Isn't it the case, though, that I mean, so particulates, clearly NOx is zero emission from electric vehicles, but particulate emissions aren't. So hasn't that change in technology broken that linkage that you used to be able to rely on?
Well, yes, as far as nitrogen oxide go, but I think you'll find that, well, I think one sense it's a wait and see, and I think, as Matthew quite correctly profiled, other sources like in cities, it's become a nice to have a log burner. People are still burning solid fuel, even though it's smokeless, and a lot of people do burn wood. And I think if you asked any local authority to, be upfront about this, it's probably one of those areas that's extremely difficult to control, but actually a lot of it goes on in the winter unseen. So it really is quite difficult. In one sense, the NOx issue was quite a nice one in one sense on the local authority basis, because it was fairly easy to quantify and to see where it was coming from. And put measures in place to manage. The particulate one is something completely different, really, but it does continue to emphasise really the measures that need to be taken across the board. So the measures that the county can actually take a lead on. I'm just looking at the Air Quality Action Plan in front of me, and if I just highlight measures that to improve air quality that particularly come under the county's jurisdiction, I'll just reel them off one after another. School travel plans. Walking and cycling is done in conjunction with the county. Then there's things like, sorry, my screen is just frozen. So we've got active travel, which is really promoted often through, through new developments. One of the things that I do in my job is to, when we get new plans for new developments come in, we make comments on developments over a particular size, whether or not we recommend that they are required to install EV charge points, and particularly larger developments if they're required to consider things like travel plans, and those travel plans have to be, agreed and put in place through the county council. And there's lots of measures that relate to schools, which has already been referred to. Walking to schools and all this sort of thing, and idling around schools, which really are measures primarily, for the county council to take a lead on. Certainly traffic management measures, and strategic highway measures are all issues that can be put in place to control where traffic goes and, you know, control the management of traffic. So I'll stop there, but all I'm trying to say is there's a massive range of measures that come into play.
I was just about to say, Roger, I've still got Frank who had his hand up, and then there's a couple of written questions popping up in the chat. So if we take Frank's question, and then I'll read out the questions in the chat, and we'll go from there. So Frank, if you give us your question.
It wasn't really a question. It was more of a bit of a summation of what Roger was saying, but also a bit of a statement. I think we are potentially at the very early stages of the implementation of measures which we could genuinely see a sea change in the use of, for want of a better term, the internal combustion engines and those other local pollution sources, including solid fuel burners in our homes. Log burners are nice to have and those sort of things. I think the collection of points that Roger was mentioning highlighted largely from the DEFRA report and things like that as well. As I said, I think we are in an ideal position to hopefully work as in partnership with county, with other organisations locally, and also with the support of many of the councillors and members here. There isn't, I don't think, a very easy and simple opportunity to have, you know, that massive input we could have, like the reduction in the NOx and things like that. I think as long as we are looking to work towards an improved air quality arrangement, I think many of the measures that we will use and utilise are as much for publicity and information raising as actually being effective. And one of those, which, I mean, I don't know the answers or how effective they are, but is the anti-idling, for example, outside schools. An ideal situation is people do not drive to drop kids off at school and do the school run full stop. But if people are going to do that, for whatever reason they are, I genuinely don't know how effective the anti-idling program is. I mean, I've asked Roger to try and dig out some information on that so that we can feed that back and circulate that. I think that if we just focus on that particular point, the benefit of having the anti-idling programs outside schools, as I said, is as much to try and educate the children, to educate the parents, that there is a need to improve things. And that very simple, visible gesture of using the anti-idling program location, a bit like the no parking thing outside schools, you know, I think that is a starter point, which is visible, easy to promote, easy to publicise, very easy to be successful, and, you know, and I don't want to sound this negative, but to jump on the bandwagon for that. But I think it is just a starter for a far bigger campaign, which will be largely invisible, but will be a lot more effective. I mean, certainly one of the points, there's a message in there about electric vehicles. Electric vehicles are very good. They are obviously zero pollution at the point of use, but air pollution at the point of use, although they still have a fair amount of particulate pollutions. The only trouble is they start from about 35,000 quid upwards, you know. So if we can have grants for 50 grand to go and buy a new EV, great. I think we'll all jump on that bandwagon. But without that, and conscious of other money linked issues as far as improving air quality, as I said, there's very, very few real big wins that we can have, I think, looking just on the air quality issues in the town centres. There are others. There's the support for energy grants, which I know my team are trying to develop and trying to work with. The way that the government is working with the energy grants isn't helping, to be perfectly honest. In the old days, they gave the councils local money to spend locally. Nowadays, you have to essentially bid for a packet of money, which you need to spend within a very short period of time. That has a massive implications locally and massive restrictions. But these are a number of issues which I think will locally affect our district-wide air quality. The other thing to bear in mind, as I can't remember who mentioned it, certainly one of the people mentioned it before, air quality and air pollution doesn't stay local. It meanders about, it drifts about, it moves about. We need to work within the county with other districts. Certainly Stevenage is nearby. They've got a very big housing development programme, but also with the other counties. Cambridge is massively developing. They are moving nearer towards Royston. They aren't yet joined, but I don't think there's an intention to join. But as that area also grows, that's going to affect our district as well. So we need to work, yes, with the county, but also with the neighbouring authorities and neighbouring county areas as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Frank. I've got, there's a bit of discussion happening in the chat now, actually, but actual questions for Roger. Also, I would encourage everybody to read through Matthew Clark's responses to the questions. There's lots of information in there and bits and pieces. If you have a chance to have a look at that, yeah, I suggest you do, because obviously as soon as this closes, that's going to be gone. Gilly Chegwin asks, Roger, what is the contribution to particulates from car tyres? There is research that shows an average car tyre is 4 kilograms lighter by the end of life. Electric vehicles are heavier than ICE and likely to cause more particulates. And also, I'll get to Roger Lovegrove's question after that.
Okay, first one. Okay, a quick response to that. I'm sure that's correct. Those are sort of figures I don't carry around in my head. I'd just say that it's not just tyres, it's brakes, obviously, and you know, just the general wear and tear on the roads themselves. So yes, I don't think there's any reason to contest that. I'm sure that's generally correct.
Well, I guess with regard to the question, it's like the contribution to particulates directly from car tyres. Is there a breakdown of what's in the particulates that can tell us, or have we not got? Is it that small that we can't really tell?
I'm sure there is, but I don't. It's not the sort of information that I carry in my head. I could certainly, if that's a question she'd like me to answer, then I'd be happy to answer it remotely after the, at some point after the meeting.
Could I just quickly add on that point? The issue regarding non-engine caused particulates, so brakes, wear and tear of the actual bodywork, the vibration of the gearboxes and the motors and such like, the various other car particulates is a big issue, and it has been identified by a number of agencies, including the car manufacturers themselves, including the AA have produced things. I mean, like Roger, I don't have access to the actual numbers and the figures. There probably is going to be a slight increase in the number of particulates from EV usage, because they, especially if they're not using regenerative braking, if they're using just passive mechanical brakes, they are harder on those brakes. The vehicles are heavier, but I think those particulates are almost going to be the next generation of pollutants that we will look at. We've done the PM10. Well, sorry, we looked predominantly at the PM10s. We're now looking at the PM2.5s, specifically from combustion sources rather than other sources, but also abrasion sources. I think the next generation of pollutants we'll be looking at will be those other issues, including brake dust. London Transport, ironically, did a hell of a lot and have a hell of a lot of information about brake dust from the tube network. So whilst that environment is nowhere near as clean, as tidy as what we're talking about here, there is information back there, and Roger can obviously do some digging around looking for that. Although I don't genuinely think it is or it should be a priority for us at the moment. I think it's an interesting to know rather than an urgent priority for us. And I think without wishing to sort of put forward any decisions or comments per se, if we can look upon that in that capacity for now and let us focus more, I think, on the more visible, the PM2.5s, the fossil fuels, which are still going to be used for the non-EV vehicles. So the vast majority of commercial vehicles, all of the home delivery vehicles that we're using from various agencies, food, non-foods, et cetera, which has seen a massive increase in the last 2 years or so. So they're the other factors that need to be built into this thing as well, I'm afraid. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Frank.
Can I just come back in just quickly? Hi, it's just Roger again. I think the one thing I think I'd like to say at this point really is in terms of where does this take us in terms of what should we be looking at as a priority? And I think it's when we think that still in many aspects road traffic is still a very major source. I think the actual management of road traffic is still and remains a very big issue. And I think the actual exposure and how close people are to road traffic is, doesn't completely go away. So I think measures that we've already got in things like the action plan, just go back to the action plan. And there's some very good things in there, like school travel plans. Again, this is a county measure, but I'm quite happy to, promote something the county is doing. There are currently 16 schools in North Hertfordshire registered with ModeShift stars, and 7 of these are holding accredited travel plans. I won't read the further detail, but things like that, that actually work with schools in terms of their individual travel plan, and to promote walking to school and park and stride and anti-idling. All of these things, can actually really do make a difference. That's at one particular level that we've already talked about, but on a wider issue, there may be some of the work that Matthew's looking at in terms of the air quality model, can actually provide some engagement with the transport planners. I mean, one thing that I found in Oxford was that once we had an air quality model that was proven, to be valid in the measures that it was actually showing, provided quite a lever, with the county council over a number of years to say, well, look, there are measures that can be looked at in the way that traffic's managed that will impact on air quality. And I think those are the kind of things that we ought to be looking for as we move forward, where we get some extra tools to, manage the issues. A lot of the problem has always been being able to demonstrate and prove that, a source really is the actual problem. I remember when I first spoke to transport planners in Oxford, they used to deny that air quality was a problem. And we had to battle for a number of years to actually demonstrate by evidence that it was a problem. And, we had a complete turnaround at the end. And, I was the lead officer in the development of the low emission zone in Oxford, all because we were able to show through air quality reports, repeated reports over a number of years, that air pollution was a problem in the centre of the city. And that's where I still focus. I think where most people are going to be exposed are going to be in the larger urban areas. So therefore, our focus should very definitely be in the central urban areas and how we manage traffic, particularly in those areas. Stop there.
Thank you, Roger. Speaking of low emission zones, one of the last questions I'm going to bring up, because we're at the time, Roger Logrove asks about, is there a case for banning diesel vehicles from Leys Avenue in East Cheap and Letchworth, obviously, or main streets in main towns, during peak hours, which would lead to things like clean air zones or LTNs, low traffic neighbourhoods and such?
Yeah, sorry, I don't know the particular area, as I'm not a local.
Two main streets in a town, basically, the main bit of driving through the middle of town, of any town.
Oh, is it? Okay, right, then possibly yes. It's one of the those areas that really does have to be looked at, and what will actually work. But that's where the modelling comes in, and where you can actually look at what the impact of different potential measures could be, and see what the potential reduction would be. If you've got a good model, an emissions model, not just an air quality model, you need an emissions model. You have a good emissions model that can actually mimic, what the changes would be if certain measures are brought in. You see, that's how we were able to demonstrate the value of a low emission zone in Oxford. We actually modelled what the change in emissions would be with particular measures. And then that was proven to be, a measure that would be valuable and valid.
Brilliant.
Stop
Thank
again.
You. Is there, all right, Matthew, Clark, you've got your hands up, and then there isn't anybody else there. And I see there's just a general conversation, interesting conversation in the chat as well. So if anyone wants to take a look at that and take it away with them. Matthew, should I ask your your question?
Thanks. It was just a follow-on comment, if you don't mind, please. Just on, I absolutely agree with looking at transport planning and those who are highways designers or scheme designers. It's really important that new schemes that are brought on have a cleaner air, kind of have a not just a nod, but have a very firm, clear.
Lost you, Matthew.
Focus, and I've managed to get quite a lot of. Am I back?
Yeah,
Someone
sorry, we
let me
lost you
know.
as you were mentioning the clean air schemes, and then it cut out.
So sorry about that, folks.
Right.
I'll blame it on the distance. I'm probably about 110 miles away from you. Yeah, we've just got quite a lot of our highways scheme designers and planners through some training on something called the Healthy Streets approach. It's something that HCC have looked at and trying to learn about and learn some of the themes and how it can help take forward good highways and town planning aspects going forward. So it was just to second Roger's comments around that, really, that we do really need to have a focus there going forward, and it's something we're actively taking forward. Hopefully another 6 months, if you'd like to invite me back, I should have more to say on that as we start to develop a way forward of trying to consolidate that mindset in all of the key people, in all of the teams, relevant teams across the county council. Thank you.
If I could just come in again very quickly with one short comment, which is one of the problems that there is in terms of certainly town planning, if you want of for want of a better term, is that we often have to consider the impact of individual developments on air quality. But one of the things that generally gets missed is what the combined impact is. So, you know, you get an assessment done of a particular development, but there's nothing that actually links with what the, you know, the wider impact is across, you know, across the whole district. So I think, again, if you can get a good emissions model, again, I'm just banging the drum on this because I know what the values of these things are, that looks across emissions across a wider area and that doesn't allow developers just to effectively submit air quality assessments just based on what their little individual local development's doing, then, you know, all well and good. And I think that's one thing that's often actually lost in the planning process as it stands at the moment. Yeah, stopped.
Great. Thank you, Roger. Right. Any more questions? Nope. I can't see anybody's hands up. Does anybody have any? Does anyone have any questions they'd like to bring to? Well, Frank or Roger, or Matthew, who's still here. Nope.
Yeah, okay. And if I just finish off then, I mean, the one thing that I haven't talked about, I'm still sort of reflecting on the action plan, really, because that's the core of what the air quality status report promotes in terms of what measures are actually being promoted to improve air quality. And the measure that's been taken forward this year for the first time is the introduction of the uptake of the EcoStars scheme in Hitchin. And that really is all about freight and delivery management. And it's what it involves is talking and engaging with businesses in the industrial estates and actually looking how they're managing their vehicles and how they're promoting low emission and alternatively fueled vehicles. That program is actually coming to an end this month, end of this month. And, you know, there is an option to extend that. So at the moment, you know, we've had some reasonable take up by firms in the Hitchin industrial estates. And the question would be whether or not there's any ambition within the council to extend that scheme to Hitchin Town Centre and beyond. So that's something to leave with you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Roger.
You're welcome.
Right. 1 second, because there's more things popping up in the chat. Okay, so I would encourage everybody to have a read through the chat if you haven't already done so. There's lots of really good conversations happening in there, questions and answers and summaries. Don't forget to, if you haven't already done so, please write down the email address to contact Matthew Clark, which is cleaner.air@hertfordshire.gov.uk. If there isn't any more comments, questions or anything to come in, I would guess that we are going to be closing, bringing this meeting to a close. Thank you everybody for coming and attending and getting involved in the meeting. Thank you so much to Matthew Clark from the Clean Air Programme at HCC and Roger Pittman, our North Hertfordshire Council Air Quality Consultant. And next meeting is 22nd of February 2023. And look forward to seeing you all then.
Hi, can I just come back quickly, just Roger, can I say, can we circulate a copy of the annual status report if people haven't seen it? So if I make that available to committee services, can that be circulated, please?
Is that doable? Brilliant. Georgina's nodding.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Fantastic, Roger. Thank you. I forget you can't see us.
Yes, sorry.
Right. Thank you so much. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye. 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 Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Bye.